Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. A very common misconception which is found regarding Islam and women is the fact that people have formed this opinion, and our scholars of repute have formed this opinion that it is essential for a lady to cover her face with a veil or a cloak. And the basis of this opinion are generally certain verses of the Quran, which are supplemented by certain ahadith also. But primarily, this face veil or the face covering has been derived through some Quranic verses. Now, before I read out to you those verses, which of course will make the context of these verses absolutely clear, let me just clarify one point, and that is that it is essential that whenever a directive be derived from the Quran, it must be derived keeping in view the context. One has to see what the actual discourse is pointing at, what the preceding verses are speaking of. And if in this particular case the context is examined, one will come to notice and realize that these verses absolutely have no relationship with hijab or niqab or with the veil. They give no directive regarding the face covering absolutely. The fact of the matter is, in those times, what happened was that people, especially the hypocrites, they would try to scandalize the private lives of the wives of the Prophet especially, and they would make various scandals. And precisely during these times, the incident of Ifk regarding which involved the Prophet's beloved wife Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha took place. And so these hypocrites had become scandal mongers. They would try to scandalize the lives of the wives of the Prophet, and they would try to implicate them in certain scandals. And this whole section of verses actually addresses these scandal mongers, and it tells them that if they do not refrain from these subversive activities, then they shall be severely dealt with. So, in a nutshell, the whole group of verses primarily deals with scandal mongers who would harass the wives of the Prophet, who would go out to relieve themselves, because in those times the houses in Medina would not have toilets, and when the wives of the Prophet would go out in the fields to relieve themselves, they would come and harass them. And whenever they would be said that, whenever they would see that a lady is wearing a cloak, they would of course refrain from that. So, and when they would see that no one is wearing a cloak, they would say that, oh, we're just teasing a slave lady. So they would come near them and try to harass them. The Quran actually pinpointed this whole situation and said that one way to redress is that whenever the wives of the Prophet and believing women go out, they should wear large cloaks over them, so that this can distinguish them from slave ladies, because in those times slave ladies or slave women would not cover themselves as such. So the Quran, in order to took a measure in order to safeguard this scandal mongering of the hypocrites. It told the wives of the Prophet to wear large cloaks over them, so that in this manner they will be distinguished from slave ladies, and then these people would not harass them, because harassing slave women was very common in those days, but no one would harass free ladies or ladies who would not be slaves. So the Quran actually gave this injunction, this order, only to stop this harassment from which was taking place from the hypocrites. Now I'll just read out to you the section of the verses which will absolutely make it clear that all these directives which occur in this set of verses have nothing to do with hijab or niqab or the face covering. They were primarily revealed to curb a certain evil prank which the hypocrites of Medina undertook in order to scandalize the lives of the wives of the Prophet. These verses occur in Surah Ahzab, and I'll read out to you the preceding and the succeeding verses also, so that the context is absolutely clear. The Quran says, وَالَّذِينَ يُؤْذُونَ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ وَالْمُؤْمِنَاتِ بِغَيْرِ مَا اكْتَسَبُوا فَقَدِ احْتَمَلُوا بُهْتَانًا وَإِثْمًا مُبِينًا يَا أَيُّهَا النَّبِيُّ قُل لِأَزْوَاجِكَ وَبَنَاتِكَ وَنِسَاءِ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ يُدْنِينَ عَلَيْهِنَّ مِنْ جَلَابِيبِهِنَّ ذَلِكَ أَدْنَىٰ أَن يُعْرَفْنَ فَلَا يُؤْذَيْنَ وَكَانَ اللَّهُ غَفُورًا رَحِيمًا لَئِن لَّمْ يَنْتَهِ الْمُنَافِقُونَ وَالَّذِينَ فِي قُلُوبِهِم مَّرَضٌ وَالْمُرْجِفُونَ فِي الْمَدِينَةِ لَنُغْرِيَنَّكَ بِهِمْ ثُمَّ لَا يُجَاوِرُونَكَ فِيهَا إِلَّا قَلِيلًا مَلْعُونِينَ أَيْنَمَا ثُقِفُوا أُخِذُوا وَقُتِّلُوا تَقْتِيلًا. So, simple translation of these verses I would read: and those who harass believing men and believing women unjustifiably shall bear the guilt of slander and a grievous sin. O Prophet, enjoin your wives, your daughters, and the wives of the true believers to draw over them a shawl when they go out. This is more proper so that they may be distinguished from slave women, of course, this is implied, and be not harassed. God is ever forgiving and merciful. And even after this, if these hypocrites and those who have the ailment of jealousy in their hearts and the scandal mongers of Medina do not desist, we shall rouse you against them, and their days in that city shall be numbered. Cursed be they. Wherever found, they will be seized and put to exemplary death. So these verses are absolutely clear. The context is absolutely clear that it was a situation of harassment with the wives and the believing women of the times of the Prophet were facing. And just in order to curb the prank of the hypocrites, this particular directive was revealed. And later on it was said that if these hypocrites, they do not desist from this scandal mongering, then of course the Prophet would be roused against them and they shall be utterly decimated and destroyed. The famous exegete of the Quran, Ibn Kathir, has actually recorded the background of these, what happened, which actually can be gauged from what he has written in his tafsir. And while recording the opinion of the famous authority, Suddi, he writes that the mischief mongers among the people of Medina would come out on the streets at dusk and get after the women of the Ansar. The houses of the people of Medina in those days were very small in size, and at nightfall the women would go out on these streets, making their way to the fields to relieve themselves. These evil people would tease these women. If they saw a woman who would be wearing a cloak, they would say, she is a free woman, and of course they would desist from any evil activity. And if they saw a woman who would not be wearing a cloak, they would pounce on her by saying that she is a slave woman. Now, Ibn Kathir has also recorded the opinion of the famous authority Mujahid, and he says that these women would wear cloaks so that it can be known that they are free women, and the mischief mongers would not then harm or tease them. So it is absolutely evident from all this discussion that these verses were revealed in order to curb the subversive activities of the hypocrites who would try to scandalize the private lives of the wives of the Prophet as well as of the believing women. And the context as well as the words fala yuzain, which means that so that they are not teased, they are not harassed, absolutely make it clear that these whole set of verses has no relationship with any hijab or niqab or face covering directives. It relates to a particular situation in which the Quran actually spelled out a procedure so in order to combat the subversive activities of the hypocrites of Medina. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم ولسائر المسلمين والمسلمات.